Good morning, everyone. I'd like to briefly introduce our special guest musician today. Dr. Sunshine Simmons is the Associate Professor of Clarinet at the University of North Florida. You can find her full bio listed in your order of service. Sunshine, we are happy to have you back playing the clarinet for us again. Thank you, Sunshine. That was wonderful. We have so much to celebrate in this month of May. Today is Mother's Day, and in just a few days, on the 17th, it is International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. Please hear the words of Barbara Hamilton Holloway to honor International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia for our opening words this morning. We gather here as individual people, young and old, male and female, temporarily able and disabled, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and straight people, all the colors of the human race. Theist, atheist, agnostic, Christian, Buddhist, feminist, humanist. We gather here as a community of people who are more than categories. We gather here, each ministering to the other, meeting one another's strength, encouraging wholeness. We give thanks for this extraordinary blessing, the gathering together of separate, unique individuals as one whole, one body of our church. Here may our minds stretch, our hearts open, our spirits deepen. Here, may we acknowledge our brokenness and be ever stirred by love's infinite possibilities. Come, let us worship. I now invite our song leaders up to lead us in our opening hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses. I also invite the congregation to stand in body or spirit and join together in singing our opening hymn, which may be found in the gray hymnal, number 298, Wake Now My Senses. We'll be singing the first 3 verses only. I'd officially like to welcome you to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or BBUUC. My name is Alyssa Halliday, and I am happy to be your worship leader today. I fell in love with this church 6 years ago. BBUUC is a church for all. No matter how you identify yourself or what path you follow, you are welcome here. We believe that everyone has a right to question, to wonder, and to find. Our faith calls us to honor interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice, all through a fabric of love. As we are all navigating through this wondrous journey of life, I am grateful that you have chosen to be here with us today. I'd especially like to acknowledge any guests or newcomers that came out to join us on this beautiful Sunday. If you are a new visitor, we warmly welcome you to our humble church. If you'd like to learn more about our church or Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to check out all of the literature on the welcome table near the entryway. If you are interested in becoming a member of our congregation, we offer regularly scheduled Learn About Us classes, and you can speak to our membership chair, Julie Smithers, who'd be happy to talk to you about the path to membership. For any questions, look for someone with a new Ask Me sticker on their name tag. There are many opportunities to serve here at BBUUC. Volunteers are needed and appreciated. They keep our congregation in motion. We currently have volunteer sign-up sheets on the credenza in the entryway to assist with hospitality during fellowship on Sunday mornings. Speaking of hospitality, we invite you to stay for fellowship and refreshments, including fair trade coffee and conversation after the service, which can be found at the back of the sanctuary. Now, at this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please make sure your electronic devices are silenced, so that we may enter into our sacred time together. I invite you to close your eyes for just a second, take a breath and feel that air moving in your lungs. And as you breathe out, will you open your eyes and join me in reciting our congregational covenant? Our covenant is printed in your order of service, and I invite you to speak the words together in unison. Please join me. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Please rise and embody your spirit and join in singing our call to worship. The words are printed in your order of service. We light our chalice each Sunday morning as a symbol of our faith. In honor of Mother's Day today, I'd like to recognize and invite who I like to think of as our beloved church mother, Miss Frances Kennicott, up to illuminate our chalice. Miss Frances will be accompanied by her loving daughter, Linda Mowers. Both of these mothers embody true Southern hospitality, and it is always a joy being in their company. Our chalice words today are from Claudine Deanne Oliva. We light this chalice for mothers and mothering, to celebrate those who have taken on the task of nurturing a young one, baby, child, or youth, into adulthood, to celebrate those who have nourished the light of truth and compassion in growing minds and hearts, to celebrate those who have committed time, money, energy to the growth of others in this world. We light this chalice to celebrate and hold dear this flame of love. Thank you, Miss Frances and Linda. Now, I'd like to invite our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Jen Jones, up to share our time for all ages.
Good morning. So this is a story about a boy named Ganesha. Ganesha is also a Hindu god with an elephant head. Ganesha is the son of the mother Parvati, who also calls him Amma. There is a cat that Ganesha finds, and in his mind, the cat is a tiger while playing. But there is something interesting about the cat or the tiger. When the cat was, the title is The Cat. When Ganesha was a small child, that makes more sense. He often amused himself by playing on forested slopes of a mountain. Sometimes he would invent games pretending to be a great king and leading imaginary warriors into battle. Once, having nothing to do, he said to his mother, Parvati, "I have nothing to do." Parvati looked surprised. "Nothing to do with the mountains for your playground," she remarked. "When my spirit is unsettled, or when my soul needs a new version, I sometimes go where the wild creatures go to see the world through their eyes." I'll go out now, decided Ganesha, but I will go hunting. Ganesha looked around outside the hut. He picked up a stout stick and a large flat rock with a sharp edge. He had tied the two together with the lengths of vine. Brandishing his new make-believe axe, he ran down, leaping out of the mountains trail, shouting with glee, "I'm the greatest hunter of all! Wild animals, run for your lives!" Ganesha stopped and looked around him. "But what shall I hunt?" he said. "I need an animal to hunt." Suddenly, a cat darted out from behind a rock and ran down the trail. "Aha!" cried Ganesha. "I'm going to pretend you're a tiger, and I'm going to hunt you." And then he ran after the cat. The cat ran down the mountain, meowing with fright. Ganesha was too caught up in the game to notice his fear. He convinced himself that he was a ferocious tiger, and he was determined to hunt her down. When he caught up with her, he grabbed her by the tail and pinned her to the ground, shouting, "Now I've got you, evil tiger." The poor cat was too afraid to do anything but lie very still. She could not even meow. She shivered, she quaked, and all of a sudden Ganesha noticed that the fearsome prey appeared to have surrendered completely. Sulkily, he let go of the cat's tail, and she ran off as fast as she could. "That was no fun at all," muttered Ganesha as he picked himself up and went back home. When he got there, he was surprised to find his mother, Pravarte, was covered with scratches and bruises, as if rocks, boulders had cut her skin and thorns had pierced her cheeks. "Amma, what happened to you?" asked Ganesha, forgetting about the disappointments of his own day. "You did this to me, child," said Pravarte to Ganesha. "Don't you remember?" "I did?" Ganesha was horrified. "No, I didn't. I would never hurt you like that." Pravarte said, "Think back. Did you hurt a living creature only a little while ago?" Ganesha was about to deny the terrible accusation completely, but then he remembered the cat. He looked at the ground in shame. He hung his head lower and lower until his big ears drooped down to his chest and his trunk slammed onto the earth. "I was the cat," said Pravarte. "Remember this for all your life. When you hurt any living creature, you hurt me." Ganesha hugged his mother sadly. "Forgive me, mother," he said. "I did not mean to hurt you." "Ah, but did you mean to hurt the cat?" said Pravarte. "No," Ganesha said. No, I didn't. It was just a game." "For you, perhaps," said Pravarte. "But as you can tell, it was not a game for me. Take care that in you play you do not injure others or cause harm, grief, or fear." "Yes, Amma," promised Ganesha. After he took special care to be gentle to the wild creatures of the forest and the streams. "As you must too, for any one of them could be Pravarte in disguise." And with that, our story is told. I would like to invite Meredith to come up. Congregation, please remain seated as we sing Go Now in Peace, hymn 413.
We take an offering each Sunday to give our material resources with generosity and gratitude. No matter how much money you put into the plate, the act of giving is a symbolic reminder that giving is just as important as receiving. That sharing what we have is how we live our value of generosity. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that generosity of spirit and deepen our sense of giveness. You can find giving envelopes in the hymnals. For those who prefer an alternative method, you can find the QR code in your order of service to donate, or go to the donate link on our website at bbuuc.org. I'd like to invite our ushers for today, Tony Piccolotti and Wanda Frazee, to come forward to accept the offering. We are most grateful for anything you feel able and willing to give. If you are unable to donate, we invite you to participate in this ritual by passing the plate down your row and back to the next. After the offering is complete, we'll stand in body or spirit and sing our offertory hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
Good morning, everyone. One of my favorite parts of being a Unitarian Universalist is hearing other people's stories about how they came to this faith. I don't have any statistical information about how many of us were born and raised UUs, but I personally know only a few, which means there are a lot of great travel stories to be told. So here's mine. As a child, I was an unchurched person. My parents, though, were both raised in the Catholic Church, but had left that faith well before I was born. My upbringing was peppered with stories of their religious experiences. My mom attended Catholic schools her entire educational life, so we heard a lot of stories about nuns. Mom told us about how when she was an elementary student, she and her classmates would save their change to save the pagan babies. The nuns would gather their pennies and nickels each week and tell their little students about how there were all these poor little children in the world who had not heard the word of God. And because they had not, they were all doomed, of course. But the children could help save the pagan babies with their change. The money was gathered to help fund the missionaries of the church who would deliver the word and save the babies. The phrase, poor pagan baby, lives on in my family to this day. My dad left his Catholic schooling in the 8th grade. He said by then he had caught on to the racket that the church was. When the nuns tried to teach his class about how Jesus rose from the dead after the stone was rolled in front of his tomb, my dad asked the nun why some of Jesus' friends couldn't have come back in the night, bribed the guard, and stole Jesus' body. For that, he got his knuckles bloodied with a ruler, and he never went back. His stories were mostly about the cruelty and nonsense that the church embodied. So while my sister and I learned about religion, it was mostly through satire and family lore. My maternal grandparents would take my sister and I to Mass when we spent the night at their house, so I did have some firsthand exposure. I was in 4th grade when my paternal grandmother passed away. The entire family attended a full Catholic funerary Mass, spoken almost entirely in Latin and Polish, which was my grandmother's native tongue. The eulogy was presented in English, thankfully, but the straight from Poland priest must have made a translation error when he said, "If Delphine can get into heaven, any of us can." When I was in middle school, I attended the local Methodist church. It definitely was not my parents' idea. I wasn't going out of concern for my soul or even a curiosity about religion. See, I started playing the flute in 5th grade. The Methodists had a youth band. As a flutist/band geek, I was lured by the music. At some point, the elders pressed me to become a member of the church. Now, remember, I'm in middle school. I clearly remember my parents telling me that while they were fine with me playing in the youth band, I was far too young to make a decision about joining a church. The Methodists disbanded the youth band a short time after that. I'm guessing it was because they quickly realized they were attracting local band kids and not future parishioners. It was during the same time frame that my dad worked for a company that was attempting to bring external combustion engines into the mainstream. The internal combustion engine is what most of us, unless we have an electric car, have in our cars, and it's the gold standard of horsepower, so to speak. The external combustion engine, called a Stirling engine after their inventor, boasts the ability to burn as fuel anything that will burn, basically. As part of the marketing of this Stirling engine, the company that was also called Stirling had a full-sized, well-appointed Winnebago motorhome that used one of their engines as the generator for the RV. Anytime you operated the internal mechanisms of the coach, like the microwave or the water pumps for the shower or the sink, the Stirling engine provided the energy. Part of my dad's job was to drive the Winnebago to trade shows, wherever that might be. One of these trade shows was somewhere in the South. I don't remember where. I was born and raised in Michigan. But my family loaded up Winnie and drove from rural Michigan to Atlanta, Georgia, where my Aunt Margaret lived. Dad left my mom and my sister and I with Aunt Margaret, and he traveled on to wherever that trade show was. Now, my Aunt Margaret has always been something of a legend in my mind. She was the first child on my mother's side to go to college. She married a man while she was in college, and when she divorced him a few years later, I got the impression it caused something of a kerfuffle within the family. I was very young when this happened. I remember my mom trying to explain how Uncle Rob wasn't my uncle anymore. She seemed to be very concerned about how my sister and I would take the news. I don't even remember Uncle Rob at all. and I was completely unfazed by the news that I was suddenly ununcled. Aunt Margaret later decided that her first degree wasn't serving her well, and she went back to school and became a lawyer. A very good lawyer, as a matter of fact. She had an office almost at the top of a building in downtown Atlanta. She had a 3-story house, and the full-time nanny and housekeeper lived on the first floor. These were all elements of a lifestyle I had never seen or heard of real people having before. So Aunt Margaret was quite the exotic specimen of how a woman could live her life. On this trip to Atlanta, Aunt Margaret took us to eat at the Hard Rock Cafe. Now, I know these are everywhere now, but back in the 80s, you didn't see one at every location that was a tourist destination. I think the one in Atlanta may have actually only been the first or second one in the United States. The chain was actually formed in London. I remember sitting in the booth trying to see every little bit of rock and roll memorabilia that was on the walls. And on the way out, Aunt Margaret bought a button for me, the kind that you pinned on your super cool denim Levi's jacket that you had in the 80s, with one of the Hard Rock Cafe's mottos, love all, serve all. The Hard Rock Cafe still uses that saying to this day. I remember thinking at the time that love all, serve all, that's just radical. I mean, it's so simple, but it's so profound. Nobody brought it up. There was no deep conversation within the family about how wonderful this phrase was. But it struck me in a way that I could not explain at the time. For a long time, I secretly adopted love all, serve all as my personal mantra, long before I had even heard about Unitarian Universalism. Maybe it was my lack of formal religious education that primed me to find a message in the marketing campaign of a casual dining chain restaurant. Part of what drew me to Unitarian Universalism was the 6 sources. To me, the sources essentially say that inspiration and truth are all around us in many forms and from many places. But the sources aren't, in word anyway, quite that open. 4 of the 6 refer to other religions or teachings. One of the sources refers to words and deeds of prophetic people. The first listed source, my favorite, describes direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures. When I think of culture in this sense, I think of the traditional definition, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Which leads me to the question, can a corporation be a people or a social group? While doing some research, I found a report titled Corporate Social Responsibility Report that Hard Rock published. It says in part, and I quote, social purpose is at the core of Hard Rock International and Seminole Gaming. For the past 50 years, Hard Rock has been guided by 4 founding mottos. Love all, serve all is one, save the planet, and take time to be kind. When the Seminole Tribe of Florida acquired Hard Rock International in March of 2007, it fused unparalleled service across cafes, hotels, and casinos with a commitment to serving local communities and gaining trust based on measurable action. The final bullet point being Hard Rock Cafe and Seminole Gaming operate more than 250 cafes, hotels, and casinos spanning 67 countries. And with that comes a responsibility to support local communities all over the world. And this is posted on their website. Now, this sounds like a manifesto you could get behind, especially those 4 founding mottos, right? It's kind of creepy. They sound like us. If you believe online resources, such as Glassdoor, Hard Rock cafes are a good place to work. People feel treated fairly. The management team scores range from good to great, and the main complaint is the nature of the work, long hours, and physically demanding. It is a restaurant, so that's not entirely unexpected. It sounds like, as a company, Hard Rock is living up to those founding mottos. Hard Rock International, including the cafes, hotels, and casinos, employs more than 10,000 people worldwide. The Seminole tribe of Florida is just over 2,000 people. We recognize the Seminoles as a culture. The Seminoles bought the Hard Rock entity 30 years after it was incorporated, so we can fairly safely state the founding mottos of Hard Rock were not derived from the Seminole culture. Do we, should we, recognize a corporation's culture as a source for inspiration and truth? As an adult, I wonder if this one little button lay the groundwork for my future adoption of Unitarian Universalism. This button also makes me ask myself, where else are there messages that I'm missing because they look like advertising? What am I missing because it doesn't look like a message? Buffalo Springfield's song, For What It's Worth, which we just heard, is one of my favorite songs. Partly because I love a good protest song, and who doesn't? And partly because it's one of the first songs, grown-up songs, I can remember hearing and understanding the words to. The song is not what people think it's about, though. And I stole this straight from Wikipedia. Although For What It's Worth is often considered an anti-war song, Stephen Stills was inspired to write the song because of the Sunset Strip curfew riots in Los Angeles in November of 1966, a series of early counterculture era clashes that took place between police and young people on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, California, the same year Buffalo Springfield had become the house band at Whiskey A Go Go. Local residents and businesses had become annoyed at how crowds of young people going to the clubs and music venues along the strip had caused late-night traffic congestion. In response, they lobbied Los Angeles County to pass local ordinances stopping loitering and enforced a strict curfew on the strip at 10 p.m. The young music fans, however, felt the new laws infringed upon their civil rights. On Saturday, November 12th of 1966, flyers were distributed on the Sunset Strip inviting people to join demonstrations later that day. That evening, as many as 1,000 young demonstrators, including future celebrities such as Jack Nicholson and Peter Fonda, gathered to protest the curfew's enforcement. Although rallies began peacefully, trouble eventually broke out. The unrest continued the next night and periodically throughout November and December, forcing some clubs to shut down within weeks. It was against the background of these civil disturbances that Stills recorded For What It's Worth on December 5th of 1966. It's this part that is the real message for me. 1,000 people in the streets, singing songs and carrying signs, mostly say, hooray, for their side. It's a great visual of what a protest looks like, but what I learned from those lyrics was that isolating yourself among people who think only like you is not a good thing. You can stand up for yourself and your beliefs and protest all you want, but when we shut out messages from outside our own culture, we make a grave error. We invite fear into our lives. Step out of line, the man come and take you away. Our UU source references cultures in the noun form, but it only seems fair to recognize that culture can also be used as a verb, as in, to maintain in conditions suitable to growth, such as to culture cells. Living in an environment suitable to growth means that you can be cultured. If we look beyond our own restrictions on what we consider a suitable environment, if we can see past the definition of culture, the noun, perhaps we too can find wisdom and knowledge and guidance right in front of us. I really love this button. It's a great keepsake from my childhood that actually helped form my adult self. And for my brief time hanging out with the Methodists, Hebrews 13-2 has stuck with me, and it reads, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Let us widen our definition of stranger, and maybe we can actually find some of those angels. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. I'd like to invite our song leaders back up to lead us in our closing hymn, number 6, Just As Long As I Have Breath. I also invite the congregation to stand in body or spirit and join together in singing our closing hymn, which is found in the gray hymnal, again, number 6, Just As Long As I Have Breath. We'll be singing all 3 verses. And when we are finished, please remain standing for the benediction and the chalice extinguishing. Please remain standing for the benediction. I'd like to call Linda back up, please, to extinguish the chalice as I read these words from Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. May it be so. Blessed be. Thank you for being with us today.